depending on where you're joining from today. Thank you for joining our weekly live podcast recording for Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. I'm also the host of Transformation Ground Control, which is the podcast we're recording this for. You can find new episodes of Transformation Ground Control every Wednesday on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as audio podcast platforms. So be sure to check us out there wherever you listen or join. So I'm excited for our panel discussion today, which is Digital Transformation Mastermind Group. So we, quite frankly, have such a broad group of people here today. There's a lot of different things we're going to cover as it relates to digital transformation. So we didn't have one specific topic within digital transformation, but we're going to touch on a number of different topics as it relates to digital transformation. And I'm going to introduce everyone here in just a moment, or have them introduce themselves. But before I do that, a couple other logistical things. I already mentioned this is part of our Transformation Ground Control podcast. This recording will become part of the episode that is released a week from tomorrow. So a week from Wednesday will be the episodes that features this discussion. I'd also love to hear where everyone's joining from today. If you don't mind dropping in the chat wherever you're listening or watching, just drop in the chat what city and country you're joining from. We'd love to see where the global audience is joining from here today. And we're going to get to questions here in just a moment. But before I introduce our guests, one commonality that all the guests have here today, which is not a coincidence, is we are all speakers at, and our companies are sponsors of the upcoming Digital Stratosphere Conference, which is a conference that we're hosting in Denver, Colorado on October 4th through the 6th. I'm going to post a little QR code here for you to scan. You can scan to learn about the agenda. You can learn about ticket pricing. You can learn about the live entertainment, the networking, all that stuff. Just scan the QR code in front of you if you'd like to learn more. And I'll take it down in a moment so I'm not blocking Kyler's face, which is super awkward, but I'll take it out in a moment, especially as we get to introductions here. So be sure to check it out. All these, we'll talk a little bit about what the people are going to be talking about, what each of the speakers are going to be talking about at Digital Stratosphere. But this is a wow, I cannot speak today. A technology agnostic conference that we're hosting in Denver, October 4th through the 6th. Covers a number of different topics ranging from digital strategy to change management to project management to trends in the technology space to implementation best practices, et cetera. So we're going to cover a lot of different topics, a lot of different keynote speakers, close to 20 different sessions and speakers at that event, October 4th through the 6th. There's also great live entertainment and peer networking too. So scan the QR code if you want to see the agenda. You can also go to stratosphere2023.com to learn more about it as well. And we'll drop that in the chat of where we're streaming here today. So I'll pop that QR code up again later as we go through the conversation again. But in the meantime, let's introduce our guest here, beginning with you, Marcus. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about Taft Law.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Eric. Look, I'm excited to be a speaker at Digital Stratosphere this year and to speak with such a good group of people here. I think we've got a lot of value to add. I personally have got over 20 years of experience in the technology industry. Prior to joining private practice here at Taft, I worked in-house in the legal departments of SAP and Infor, and I've got a vast array of varying types of technology-related experience, from drafting digital transformation type agreements, consulting agreements, software development agreements, and then litigating failed projects when they go sideways. So I can give you kind of the front end and the back end of how these things play out in real life when you fail to dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Yeah, and you'll be talking about that at Stratosphere too, some of the legal considerations and contractual considerations as it relates to transformations and software procurement. And in fact, I'm going to ask you a question about that here in just a moment as we get into the conversation. So excited to have you. Taft has been a longtime sponsor of Digital Stratosphere. In fact, you guys have sponsored every Stratosphere we've hosted, beginning with the very first one that we did back in 2018. So thank you for being a part of it again.
Yes, absolutely. We find a lot of value in this, and we think it's a great organization and a great conference. So.
Great. Yep. Well, thanks for being here. And then we've got Mehdi from Technology Evaluation Centers. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about TEC, Mehdi.
Thank you very much for having me and putting this very selected, excellent experience of the people together for this event and for the Stratosphere. My background is I'm an engineer, originally from software development, and eventually moved into the advisory and consulting with our company, which we basically advise on companies that are trying to go through the digital transformation and buying or implementing ERPs or other enterprise applications. So we are impartial company such as yourselves, and we basically try to make the best selection for our clients based on our experience and what's in the market. And we have a data-driven approach where we have all the information about the different applications in the market and a vast selection of functions and features and processes that are related to the enterprise applications, which is part of our technology platform. Again, very thankful for this, event, and we are looking forward to see you all at the Stratosphere.
Absolutely. Look forward to having you guys there. And, we, even though we at times compete with one another, Mehdi, our two firms are actually partners as well. And we license your software and use your software in our engagement. So we have a close relationship with TEC.
Yeah. I mean, and this is very true that our platform is we are trying to promote the good knowledge and the facts in the market. And you're right, we supposed to be competitors, but we are cooperating very well in this market together.
Yeah, I want so bad not to like you and just think of you as a competitor, but it's really hard to do when you're such a nice guy and as smart as you are. So,
thank you very much.
We decided to be frenemies instead.
Yeah, exactly. That's better.
Right, exactly. All right, and then we've got Adam from Third Stage Consulting. Adam, tell us about yourself.
Good morning. So I just was thinking this morning, this is our sixth year doing this. If you count the remote digital transformation stratospheres, and it's really an exciting time to be getting back to the in-person side of things.
Yeah.
These events are so much fun, and you learn so much more when you're in person. You make better connections. You generally have a sense of absorbing things better. You tend to not just turn your camera off and tune out while it's on in the background. It's just all around so much more fun and fulfilling. And so I'm looking forward to getting back to that.
Me too.
Our first Stratosphere in Denver. I think it's fun that we're getting back to Denver for this as well. So really looking forward to this and meeting a whole bunch of new people.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, likewise. And you are managing director at Third Stage Consulting.
Yes, I sure am. So managing director at Third Stage Consulting Group. I'm responsible for the delivery mechanism of our team. So our team is set up where our directors are, they all build teams to solve our clients' challenges. And those teams all fall under their purview, which means that I need to make sure that they have what they need to be able to deliver. And if they don't, then I got to go find it and give them all the tools and mechanisms required to deliver the level of success and quality that we pride ourselves on at Third Stage.
Yeah, very cool. Good to have you here. Thanks for being here. You've been on this podcast many times as well, as has Greg Benton, who's also from Third Stage Consulting. So, Greg, tell us about yourself.
Greg Benton, Chief Strategy Officer with Third Stage. Very excited to be heading into a Stratosphere in person this year in Denver. And, we just held a Stratosphere in London a couple of months ago, and that was a great interactive opportunity. I come from about 25 plus years of really implementation, remediation, and developing strategies for our clients. The really marvelous thing about this is everybody's a little bit different, right? And all of the industries that are looking at digital transformation are following disparate roadmaps, but they all have a common goal. They are all trying to get to that third stage of implementation success with the digital transformation. And really just enjoyed talking about that, interacting with people who are bringing their fresh ideas to what we can offer as a firm. and also interacting with people like Mehdi and Marcus and the Avero folks in terms of, getting everything out there, having it discussed completely, and then turning around and finding solutions that actually can tactically move your organization forward. So a little bit of a shameless plug for Stratosphere at the end there.
Hey, that's we have no problem with that since we're all part of Stratosphere. We're happy to do that, and I'm going to pop up the QR code again since you mentioned it. I'll leave that up just for a second. If you want to scan that, you can see the agenda and see what we're all speaking about, as well as what other speakers that aren't here today on this session, what they're speaking about as well. So Megan from Avero Advisors, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here today. And thank you, Eric, for inviting us to Stratosphere this year. This is our first year engaging with Stratosphere and speaking. Unfortunately, you guys will not be hearing from me at the conference. My fearless leader, Mr. Abhijit Varekar, AV for short, he will be speaking. And I do believe Mr. Robert Krnovich will be speaking as well. They could not be here today. They had prior obligations, but we are super excited for the opportunity to engage with you all. Real quick, Avero Advisors is a reputable third-party consulting firm. We specialize in providing ERP consulting services tailored to the specific needs of local cities, counties, and quasi-government agencies across the United States. We have a strong focus in delivering expert guidance and support throughout the entire ERP lifecycle. We are dedicated to helping public sector organizations streamline their operations and enhance their overall efficiency. So happy to be here this morning. Thank you all.
Thank you for being here. And one thing you didn't mention is that your fearless leader, AV, is going to be speaking, as you mentioned, at the conference. But he and I are doing a debate style format, which I'm really excited for. I've never done it, but I think it's going to be super cool because we're going to pick different positions. Mm-hmm. And you and Kyler are going to help moderate this, but you, as the neutral, impartial moderators, and you're going to ask us questions like, for example, which is better, agile or waterfall? And I'm going to pick a side, he's going to pick a side, and we're going to debate each other on it. But I think the real reason, having said that, I think the real reason he's not here today is he's kind of afraid. I feel like he may be afraid of what might happen at that, and he's sort of getting ready for the debate, I imagine, because he's afraid of having to debate me. But
maybe.
I debate trash talking going on over here.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I know he's really good at it. That's why I'm preempting his trash talk. Because if he was here, he would definitely be trash talking. So
I think you need 2 podiums, though.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Some boxing gloves, maybe. I don't know.
And security guards. We have to have security up there to like referees.
Announcers.
Exactly. It'll be fun. So we're looking forward to having you guys involved with the event as well. So thanks for being here, Megan. Yes. And then last but not least, Kyler, our co-host on Transformation Ground Control and also a Third Stage consulting team member. Tell us about yourself, Kyler.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. This is our usual Tuesday live stream, and we're excited to have all of these kind of different opinions when it comes to digital transformation. And as we look at Stratosphere, that's the beauty of the event, is just the diversity and the variety and kind of the unbiased environment. So here at Third Stage, I have the privilege of running the marketing side and our communication side. So I get the cool job of interacting with all of our great audience members and learning from our wonderful team here. So I'm super excited for this conversation. I can't believe we have all of these people on one screen. I mean, that's pretty amazing to have that insight. So definitely it's going to be a rewatcher. So save this one and wherever you are joining from today. And I highly encourage you to ask questions in the comments because this is just such a unique opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of comments here, I want to just recognize the audience and where they're joining from today. As I mentioned, you typically get people all over the world, and today is no different. We've got Will from Naperville, Illinois, Sam Graham from Spain, Dan Alderage from Reston, Virginia, Suji from Orlando, Florida, someone from Italy, Ryan from Denver, Kevan from Louisiana, Pramod from India. We've got Callie from Columbia, Maryland, Jacob from Denmark in Copenhagen. A few people from India, so thank you all for being here today. Mohammed from Tehran, and then look at this. Look who's lurking in the background. This is AV from Avero. lurking in the background, taunting us, but not. He's too afraid to be on stage with us for some reason. Probably again because he's afraid of the debate that's upcoming here in October in Denver. But I'm going to keep smack talking now that I know he's listening and he's not here to defend himself. But thank you for everyone for being here, wherever you're joining from, and just to give you a sense of today's format. I'm going to ask some real basic questions to start us off of each of the speakers based on some of the topics they're going to be covering at Digital Stratosphere. But I encourage you, the audience, to ask whatever questions you have for this group. This is a pretty unique group in that I think this covers a pretty good spectrum of knowledge, certainly a lot of depth and background knowledge in transformations, a lot of years of experience here. So any questions you have about transformation, we'd love to hear your questions, especially with this group. It's pretty unique to get this kind of a group together, so I appreciate everyone being here. And then later in the show, stick around for a few minutes because after I get through those initial questions and some of the audience questions, we're also going to have Kyler run us through a sort of more of a lightning round, either or sort of a discussion. So she's going to facilitate some questions around that here in a few minutes. But to get started, though, let's start with some general tech trends. And I'm gonna pose this question to you, Greg, right in the middle of the screen. For those of you that don't remember who Greg is, he's the one right in the middle. So the one waving. So what are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing in the tech space? And then, of course, we'll want to hear what the others have to say as well, but we'll start with you, Greg.
Well, it's not easy, Eric. I mean, we've got a number of trends that are really coming to the fore. But I think in a word, or in two words, actually, composable ERP. So the fact is, over the last decade, ERP systems as a replacement for the older systems that were running, finance, supply chain, human resources, human capital, were looked at as kind of a single-threaded solution. You go to a single ERP vendor, you find somebody who's going to be a good partner going forward, and you select that set of applications. You implement it over a period of 12 to 24 months, and then you have the resulting ERP system and your digital enterprise operations at the end. That has changed a little bit. A lot of people are able to leverage AI and some of the interoperability platforms like Palantir, Snowflake, Databricks, and be able to bring everything into a centralized shared services model where you can gather information from disparate sources. You can also sequence in a lot of the ERP systems that are actually replacements for those older finance and supply chain systems. And so that interoperability and capability of bringing disparate sources together allows you to sequence in properly the ERP system of choice. So as you go through your strategy in the next 5 years of your planning and your roadmap, being able to get to a time to value in months rather than years of implementation is really what a lot of the organizations we're working with are looking for. And we're going to be talking about that at Stratosphere with a number of experts that are really going to have kiosk presentations developed around AI, around interoperability platforms, and so forth. So,
yeah, it seems like organizations are becoming less tolerant of the super high risk, high cost implementations that may or may not deliver business value, and so they're looking for other alternatives in the market in many cases. Right. And I think that's where a lot of these interoperability and BI based systems and alternatives to ERP are coming in. What do the rest of you think? I don't know, Mehdi or Adam in particular, if you guys have specific thoughts around trends in terms of technology or things that you see changing in the marketplace as far as enterprise tech is concerned.
Yeah, I guess what you just said is very true, Greg. That when in the past companies usually went for a single solution, now they are more open to mix and match, and that really brings up the necessity for having a good architecture design for the entire platform and knowing what you want to get out of the systems or that are working together going forward, and which each of them or the scope of each of them is defined, and how are you going to go about implementing each one of them to work together seamlessly.
Right. Yeah, great
I
point.
agree with that too, and that those words composable ERP are gaining a lot of momentum, and I think that it's kind of one of those things that's from a trending perspective starting to replace the best of breed. It's almost like people are tired of saying best of breed, so they're trying to find different ways of saying it. Just like we've had clients that are sick and tired of the words change management, just call it something else.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Anything else.
Change the change management.
Exactly, right. So I think that composable ERP trend is something that is gaining a lot of steam, and I think that part of it has to do just as much with how you get to where you're at the point where you replace an entire ERP system, right? We've all worked with clients who know that this is a big deal. Pulling the whole thing out all at once and replacing it is hard. It's fraught with risk, and and it takes a long time and it's expensive. These are all things that nobody in business wants to do. So if you made a list of all of the things that executives generally want to avoid, it's expensive, takes a long time, difficult, risky. Like that's ERP if you're going to replace the whole thing. So for me, it makes a ton of sense to have people who are saying, okay, how can I build this one step at a time?
Right. Yeah.
Biggest problem areas. Yeah, exactly. So, and then if I build it one piece at a time, I can start leveraging value faster as well. That's another piece of what I think this composable ERP trend is really highlighting is that speed to value. I can replace my one supply chain system, get all my MRP going better, and really streamline my biggest pain points by just replacing that segment of the system and integrating it with the rest. You start to create problems when you duct tape things together like that. So at some point, I do think that a lot of this composable ERP, if we're not talking about some type of an interoperability platform that pulls it together, you start to end up creating a self-fulfilling prophecy when you're starting to talk about replacing the whole ERP. But I think it's definitely an important trend to be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to turn to the audience here, just some comments and questions here. Julio on LinkedIn says, hi, everyone. Thanks for putting so much experience together, joining from Italy. So thank you for being here today. There's another good question. But first, I'll get to this comment from Will on LinkedIn who says, I'm looking forward to Stratosphere, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there, Will, and meeting you there along with everyone else that's attending. So thank you for your kind words there. Another question that's worth noting, this is from Joey on YouTube. Joey says, is Third Stage hosting this? If by this you mean Digital Stratosphere, yes. Third Stage is one of 4 sponsors of the Digital Stratosphere event. So we will be there as well as the other people and companies on the screen here in front of you here today. So quick question along those lines of, as we're talking about tech trends, if we sort of shift gears and talk about something that's related, but a little bit different angle or lens is, as we're navigating all these different options that Greg and Adam in particular just unpacked, Mehdi, in terms of how you select enterprise software, what are some of the most important factors that you're seeing with your clients, Mehdi, as far as selecting the best enterprise software?
Yeah, so it's a very it's a very broad question, but I try to get to some of the problems or areas that you shouldn't do. And also getting a little bit into what should you do. The first thing that most companies do that it's a little bit, causing trouble down the road is that they first think about vendors and the applications and platforms right away at the start of the project. So whether we go with SAP or Microsoft or any other applications, they focus on the technology, they focus on the vendors and the proper the platform they're offering, as opposed to focusing on their requirements and needs, gaps, and the bottlenecks within the organization and why they're going through that digital transformation in the first place. And what we find is that if you start your project by looking at or negotiating or start negotiating with the vendors, you're right away going into a direction where they take you to a place where they're going to push their product on your company and not necessarily looking at what really the problems are with your current system or your current processes. And the best way to go about doing this is that forget about the vendors at the beginning of the process. Focus on the business processes. And to a certain point, I would say, get the IT out of the picture as well. Get the business people, define the scope of the project and the requirements and the needs. And of course, with the help of IT and the help of consultants such as yourselves, ourselves, or other companies that work in this area, come up with the specific requirements that the systems should have and get that approved by your business people within your organization. That way, you get to get them involved in the decision process. So if Adam wants to use that term again, your change management process is becoming easier because they're going to be part of the decision-making process of changing the digital platform that they're going to be using. And because of that, you're going to have less trouble going forward. And you also make sure that once you involve the vendors, you know what you want from the system. So you are a more educated and more knowledgeable client to the vendors, and they will appreciate that as well, because now they don't have to do all of this risky kind of proposals that they have to mark up a little bit of not a little, in some cases, a lot of cushions for themselves to be profitable still if things change. So you define your scope based on your requirements and then get the vendors involved in the process. And that makes things go much smoother going forward for your selection process. And as well, you're getting the business people involved in your decision process early on, and the IT is going to be supporting this initiative throughout the process.
Right. Yeah, great points. Well, how about you, Megan? I know both the Vero and TC and Third Stage, we all do a lot of software selection type work. Marcus does a lot of contract negotiations for companies going through selections. We're going to ask him a question about that in just a moment. But from your perspective at Vero, anything you would add to that list as far as things to consider or criteria that are most important when selecting the right technology for your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that my boss says all the time is that when you're looking to build a house, you don't just go to the architect and say, I want to build a house, right? You go and you determine what type of land you want the house to be on. You define the blueprint, what's going to go in this house. And so to Mehdi's point, defining those requirements up front is key because those requirements then become the RFP. And that's how you market to your vendors. And that's how you're going to get what works for you. Because if you select your vendor on the front end, they're going to give you a lot of broken promises. And they're going to say, yes, we can do X. Yes, we can do Y. Yes, we can do Z. And then when you get into it, that's not the case at all. So back to the requirements that become the RFP. Once those vendors can check off on those requirements definitions that their software can, in fact, perform that function, that then becomes your contract. So why is that contract important with those requirements in it? It holds the vendor accountable, right? So if you do get into implementation and the software does not work for you, you can go back to the contract and say, hey, you checked off on this one specific requirement that I needed, and you can't do it. And so then that's when you maybe can break the contract, maybe not. But I think, definitely performing a needs assessment and knowing what you need up front before you go to market is key.
Right. Yes. Great point. And you sort of alluded to, the RFP, the contractual process as it relates to procuring software, which sort of leads to another question for Marcus here. Marcus, from an attorney's perspective, and for those of you watching that don't know who Marcus is, top center of the screen is Marcus. what are some of the biggest software contract gotchas, in terms of if I'm out procuring software and related services like Megan just described, what are some of those things to be most aware of, or those top issues that I should be aware of as I'm negotiating a contract?
Yeah, let me go through those. But I want to talk about something just very briefly about what Megan just raised, and I think it's important from a contractual standpoint. And she referenced an RFP in the contract, but I think not including what your business requirements are in the contract is a huge gotcha in just kind of a larger sense. Okay, because I can't tell you how many times I've dealt with clients in litigation where there's an issue where the software doesn't do something that was deemed to be critical. And the basic question, which Megan just brought up, is, okay, well, was that a key business requirement? Yeah, it was our most important one. Okay, well, is it in the contract? Well, no. Why? And if you're not defining your business requirements, and if you're not putting them in the contract, you really do increase the likelihood that you're going to have substantive issues down the road, because that road is going to be filled with broken promises, just like Megan said, and it's the severity of those processes or promises is going to that will dictate whether you're going to call me or not. As far as kind of just general gotchas, I think from the perspective of the cloud, there's really this mentality pushed by vendors that the cloud is somehow this easy one-size-fits-all solution. And that translates to the contracts where they say, well, look, this is a non-negotiable contract. Everybody signs it. We have to have a consistent service offering across our customer base. And so we can't make any specific changes to our offering for you, which translates into the position that, hey, we don't make any changes to the contract. And I will tell you this, that is not true. Everything is negotiable. And it just depends on how much leverage you have and how much money you are spending. There's a substantive difference between an $18 million software deal and a $50,000 software deal. And you're going to have different positions with respect to leverage for those deals. And one of those contracts is much more negotiable than the other. But you've got to push back on onerous and unreasonable terms. And again, to Megan's point, is that that contract really should serve as a management tool to dictate what that vendor is going to do during that implementation or integration, and really beyond, for the life cycle of your relationship with that vendor. Some of the other things that we see that I would define as gotchas, and these are kind of more from a mentality standpoint. Again, in this whole cloud push, is vendor pressure to sign these contracts. Hey, here's a non-negotiable contract. You've got 1 month to sign it, and you're getting a 30% discount off list. And if you don't sign it by the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of the year, that discount is going to evaporate and you're not going to get anything. What I will tell you is that's probably, there's some level of truth to that, but you're still going to get some kind of a discount. These people still need to make their numbers. They're still going to push you. They're still going to want you to sign. And you've got to think kind of with a bigger picture here. Is it important enough for you to have this contract reviewed to mitigate risk, or is it important enough, or is it more important to get a 30% discount off of the list, which is an illusory discount because the list doesn't mean anything anyway, in my experience, right? You're not really getting much of a discount at all because they give everybody a huge discount off the list price. I'd rather, save money where it counts, limit my liability, make sure I've got strong indemnity provisions. So if this thing really goes sideways, I'm saving myself a ton of money versus money on the front end where it doesn't really matter, but it's going to matter on the back end. There's a saying in my business: early legal advice is not expensive, and that's true. I mean, if you do your contract right in the beginning, you're going to save yourself a whole bunch of money on the back end because you're going to avoid having to go to litigation, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a lawsuit and time and effort when you could have done it for a third of the price on the front end. So those are some of the bigger things that I see. There's a lot there to unpack, though.
Yeah, and a lot of internal general counsel team members will proclaim that they can handle this sort of negotiation, and they certainly probably can from a T's and C's perspective at a high level. But I think one of the things you bring to the table is not just the legal understanding, but also the art of digital transformation, all the nuances that you mentioned as far as what to be looking for and what some of the the dangers are that aren't purely legal. They could end up being a legal issue later on, but a lot of times a pure attorney that doesn't have experience in this sort of thing isn't necessarily going to recognize some of the things that you're talking about there.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, look, most attorneys that look at commercial contracts are going to be able to say, hey, well, this language is unreasonable. This is one-sided. But the real art is, okay, well, what do you ask for in response to that? What's market? What's the vendor going to accept? What can you push back on? And just as importantly, what's not in that contract that typically is there, and what should you be asking for? All with a view towards managing that project, ensuring success, and making sure that you don't end up in a digital transformation train wreck, which we speak about on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah. And it turns out RFP has a couple different meanings here. One is request for proposal. That was one of the serious questions, was what is RFP? But then AV, who again, now he switched platforms. If you've noticed, he went from LinkedIn, now he's on YouTube, continuing to taunt us in the background. But he says RFP stands for really fun project. So as he's bouncing around from platform to platform, basically being everywhere but here up on the stage with us, we'll continue to monitor AV's contributions to the conversation here. So speaking of AV and Avero, Megan, I have a question for you then. So we talked a bit about general tech trends and how to select software. Marcus just talked a little bit about how to procure the software from a contractual perspective and some things to think about at a high level. What about during implementation itself? What are some of the biggest keys to implementation success that you and your team have noticed?
Yeah, I think to achieve a successful ERP implementation, one should start by defining clear goals and objectives for what they want the outcomes to be. I think your executive sponsorship needs to be on board. I think it starts from the top level down. When we're talking about change management, those types of people need to be on board. Their commitment and involvement are crucial for overcoming any obstacles and ensuring the success of the project. I think a cross-functional team that includes representatives from various departments is important. This team should be responsible for any decision-making, planning, and execution. We've talked about the thorough needs assessment. I think that is really key on the front end. And then vendor selection, we've talked a little bit about that. Carefully evaluating your RFP, making sure that those requirements definitions become your RFP, and making sure that your RFP aligns with your organization's needs, budget, and long-term goals. And then the biggest piece is change management. Developing a change management strategy to help employees adapt to the new system, training, communication, and involvement in the decision-making process and key components of successful change management.
Great points and great segue to my next question, which is for Kyler, which is why you mentioned change management, Megan, and you said you think it's the most important thing to implementation. I would totally agree with that, by the way. But Kyler, why is change management so important to digital transformation?
Well, I think as we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, change management is a really holistic, encompassing term, and it's really unique to each organization. And that's the kind of the point of having this conversation is really what's best for you. Change management takes into consideration the people side that's paired with the people, process, and technology, which again, shameless plug, Eric talks about in his new book, The Final Countdown. If you haven't read that, that's a great kind of overview of what that looks like as far as using those three components. But when we look at change, it's really understanding from a perspective of when you implement new technology, what is that going to look like within your organization, and how are you going to optimize that investment? We talked about a lot of really important points here. How do you select the right software? How do you ensure your contracting is sophisticated? How do you ensure that you're taking a good interoperability or composable approach? But you could do all of those things perfectly. And if you don't execute in understanding the DNA of your organization or how you actually optimize the return on that investment, it's going to become a technical debt and, a system that kind of just sits on the shelves or is not optimized, or even worse, is perceived negatively. as a threat to your organization, which can be incredibly dangerous.
But I want to build on that too. I think it's important that you don't just say change management. You have to live it and breathe it. You know, we talk a lot about digital transformations becoming cultural shifts for organizations that don't have a competency in this level of change. And I've seen too many executives teams just say, we're going to do change management. And we're going to tell our managers to do change management. And they're going to tell their managers to do change management. And everybody says it all out loud, all at the same time, lots and lots of times. Like just saying it makes it happen. And that's really one of the biggest traps we see a lot of folks fall into. We did change management. And it's still didn't work. Well, you said that you were going to, and then you did nothing. Did you have a communications plan? What's that? Did you have any type of organizational readiness assessments on actually asking people how they wanted to be able to manage through this change? Well, why would we do that? This is exactly my point, right? So when we think about change management, you have to be able to not just invest in it by saying something about it and throwing money into it, but doing things with it. Executives at the ERP, from an ERP perspective, whether it's composable or not, executives need to be a part of the change management push. And it's not just delegating it away. The very instant an executive delegates the most important part of your implementation away, they give license to the person that they delegated it to delegate it away. Yeah. And because it's hard, people tend to continue to delegate it away and it doesn't get done. And all of a sudden, the CEO wants to know why our change management efforts are failing. And it's because nobody's doing it. They're just talking about it.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Makes total sense. So Kyler, you had some quick hit decision questions for us, right? I forgot how did you frame this?
Some this or that, my favorite.
Okay.
Putting everyone on the spot. So
let's do it.
So yeah, okay, great. Let's do this. So adding a little, energy to the conversation when we have a lot of different thoughts. It's always fun. So this is an interactive game that we play with our audience too. So it's called this or that. So I'm going to give you this or that, and then I'm going to ask one of our stakeholders here on the screen, and I want you guys to answer in the comments so we can kind of get that. And we do have one that I always have to start with because it was an epic debate between Adam and Eric, but it is Elvis or the Beatles. So this or that. So either put Elvis, if you're an Elvis fan, or the Beatles, this or that. So Eric, Elvis or the Beatles?
The Beatles, of course. Okay. I don't even know how to compare the two.
I don't even know how that got started. So let's go. I've been dying to ask Marcus this one. So I will let you explain too. So you can pick your this or that. But this or that, Agile or waterfall?
I am going to go with waterfall, and that's a no-brainer for me. And from a contractual standpoint and a software attorney standpoint, Agile is just a nightmare. And it is, to me, an excuse to avoid contractual responsibility, to avoid detailing milestones and deliverables. I think it's just a recipe for disaster. And I'd rather have everything detailed on the front end rather than saying, hey, we're going to just iterate and you're going to get what we get. You're going to get what you get and you're not going to get upset, which is what I tell my 5-year-old.
Us too.
Yeah. It doesn't work in the digital transformation space though. So that's an easy one for me.
Yeah. It often doesn't work with the 5-year-old either. So we really got to crack the code on that one.
It doesn't. I've tried to develop a contractual framework for mine and she doesn't like that either. So.
That sounds like a blog. That sounds like a video. We got to hear some futures things. So let's go to you.
I'm actually, okay. You know what though? I have to, sorry to interrupt though. I just had this visual I have to share with the group here. I had this visual of every time a software vendor now is giving a presentation and talking about how they're taking an agile approach and how great it is. I imagine Mark is just sort of popping out from behind the screen and think, actually, agile is just an excuse to not fulfill your contractual obligations. That's the real reason why they're pitching you agile right now.
And pop out from the other side of the screen and just go thumbs up.
Right.
Somebody needs to create a meme of that. Right. That would be great for our social platform.
Yeah. AV's meme game is strong.
It is.
Eric, I'm gonna say
It is.
you got to like really pull that up. He's got a good meme game. But pulling us back, let's go to Mehdi on this one because I'm interested. I know it's hard. Sometimes we say it depends, and that's okay. And you're new to this game, Mehdi, so I won't
Yeah.
throw you into the cold water. So on premise or cloud solution.
Oh, that's a good one. Nowadays, I would say cloud. The reason being is the cost of operating your, data rooms and security upgrades and all of those things, and keeping up with all the software patches and everything else that goes around maintaining those servers. I would say from that end, of course, cloud. But at the other end, when you're looking at how the vendors are cashing in and they try to hook you up with the cloud subscription, in the long term, cost-wise, probably cloud is going to cost you more. But if I have to make a choice, I would say cloud.
Very good. Good job, Mehdi. You answered better than anyone on this screen. So congratulations. You are the number one top this or that player. So let's go to Adam, and I'll let Greg chime in, but I just know that this is going to trigger. So off-the-shelf proprietary software, a core ERP suite, or open source?
Oh, wow. Off the shelf, 10 times out of 10. Open source puts so much, it just recreates the old iSeries green screen in a modern environment, in my opinion. You had to maintain it all yourself. You had to create it all yourself. And you expose yourself to all of the bad habits that got you into the place that you are trying to move on from your over-customized green screen software. I think it's a limiting factor. It sounds really good. And can be really good. I want to say that open source has its place for the right clients, and I've recommended it a number of times for folks that can handle it. But I think that if we're going just breadth of the market, what should people be focused on? It should not be open source because it just requires too much work on the client, and they're going to find themselves overwhelmed by it and not launching it. Far more likely that happens than with an off-the-shelf. That's a personal opinion. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't recommend open source. I certainly have, but I found that it's kind of like it's one of those things that is a responsibility that clients need to have to themselves if they're going to go open source. And if you can't do that, then you need to know it and accept it.
It does trigger me a little bit, but Adam, I completely agree with you. When we talk to our clients, especially about program management, where we're managing the implementation process, right? The adhering to the out of the box as much as possible is a common theme. I mean, everyone organization-wide is trying to reduce risk, reduce cost, everything everybody has been talking about on the panel here. And the only way to really do that, especially with software vendors that are now moving to multi-tenant cloud and continual improvements being rolled out periodically, for the next 20 years, if you're going to select a partner in an ERP system, you really have to adhere to that out-of-the-box approach. So,
absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And then when it comes to Megan, I have one for you. What versus public versus private? So let's see if we could do that. This is a hard one. So let me just tell you, if you could pick this or that. To have on your project, strong PMO project governance or strong cultural organizational change initiatives?
Strong organizational change initiatives, because I think that's where it starts. I think you have to have goals and a vision, and it starts with the change from the top down. Hands down, before you start anything, whether it's a digital transformation project or implementing, a new idea from an employee, I think it all starts with being open at the top at your executive level.
Excellent answer. And then to you, Eric, to round us out of our lightning round, Stratosphere 2023 conference, versus any other event in the entire universe and planet?
Ooh, that's about as
That's fun.
difficult as the
I know.
Beatles versus Elvis conversation, and this should give you a preview of what my answer would be. It'd be Stratosphere. Here's the QR code. But I think Stratosphere, because all kidding aside, this is the only conference I know of in the industry that's tech agnostic. It's meant to bring together some of the greatest minds in the industry. It's not here. We're not here to plug any technology or plug any certain type of trend, which is what a lot of conferences are intended to do, which is really push certain products and certain types of technologies. We're here to help clients figure out what the best path forward is for their transformations and to give them some of the insights and the diversity of thinking to help them think outside the box of drinking vendor Kool-Aid and sort of the usual marketing spin that you get from the industry. So that tech agnostic approach, the broad approach is really important. I'd love to hear the audience's feedback on the agenda as far as if there's certain topics that are of particular interest to you that you see on the agenda. You can see the agenda by scanning the QR code. You can also register with that QR code. But I'd love to hear the audience's feedback on what topics they see on the agenda that they're most excited about. But this a long-winded way of saying I'll take Stratosphere any day, which is why we created the event, because it didn't exist in the market until we created it. So, well, good. Well, thanks for that lightning round. That was a good. That's always fun to put us on the spot and make us think outside our comfort zone of it depends as consultants, which I know I always struggle with having to pick one side or the other. So, thank you for guiding us through that. A couple other comments here. There's a lot of really good questions coming in through the chat, a lot of diverse comments on a lot of different topics. First of all, I have to bring in a counterpoint here from Sam Graham. He says Elvis was his choice, one of the best country music artists ever. So, Adam, you are not alone. You're not the only one that thinks, and I'm sure there's others listening that disagree with the Beatles, my Beatles bias there. So a lot of other good questions here, but I guess, maybe to summarize what I'm seeing in the thread here, and maybe to summarize our conversation here today, what are some of the biggest takeaways or sort of lessons you guys have learned in your experience? If there's just one thing you could leave a project team with, or someone who's about to start on a transformation, or perhaps is struggling with their digital transformation, what's that one nugget, that one piece of advice that you would give to them? Let's start with you, Greg. What's that one thing you would narrow it down to?
Yeah, I would say executive alignment up front. And this is a question that's taking the air out of the sails of a lot of the other people on the panel, right? But really just getting the organization ready to go forward in a single direction from the very beginning, understanding your objectives as an organization, and then choosing your partners wisely on the journey is really the way that everything comes together in the right way for organizations.
Yeah. How about the rest of you guys? Mehdi, what would you add to that?
I would say everything Greg said, but also don't rush through the decision. You have to take your time, understand, the problem areas that you have, and negotiate properly. As also Marcus said, the deal is going to be there no matter what. So don't rush. Don't give in to the pressure from the vendors to sign a not so good deal for yourself because you're trying to save a little bit of money, because that will come back and haunt you later on. Select the partners, as Greg said, is good. And that those partners are not only the software vendors, but also the system implementers and the system integrators that you're going to be basically giving the key to your system to. So they have to have the experience to implement the software for your industry with the best practices for your organization. So I would say take your time, evaluate every possible options that are out there, and good deals are going to come back if you are a serious buyer and they are really serious sellers. So don't rush. I would say that's my thing.
It's great advice.
Eric, I think remembering that these are not always technology projects, they're people projects. And your people have to have the buy-in. And where does that come from? It comes from setting those goals and expectations up front and visioning. Where do you want your organization to be in the next 5 years? And aligning your people to that and getting the buy-in, and not only the people that, their lives are good, their everyday, day-to-day tasks are going to change, but also your outside vendors. How are they going to align with your goals and visions? So just remembering that these are people projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. How about you, Marcus? What would you add to that as far as the big takeaways, the one nugget of advice you'd give?
I think all that's beautifully said. And really, from my perspective, there's no greater tool than the contract and the contract negotiation process to do that. Because, it's designed, for you to have a back and forth conversation about what your expectations are and what the vendor's expectations are with respect to that implementation or integration project. So, I don't think you want to short shift, that process. You need to let it play out and really, spend the money on it that it is necessary and give the time to it that's necessary. Because the ultimate goal is to have, a clear and defined contract that's got your expectations in there. It's got the vendor's expectations in there. And so when there's something that does go sideways, there's a defined process within that contract that tells everybody exactly what is supposed to happen so that you're, avoiding unnecessary escalation and problems down the road. So I think that's, to me, it's a huge takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah. Adam, how about you?
A couple of things. First of all, selecting the right system is important, but it's more important to implement it well. At the end of the day, you can select a bad system and implement it well, and that's a far better result than selecting the perfect system and implementing it poorly. So remember that your implementation, like selecting a system is important, but that's doing work to create a whole lot more really hard work. And focusing on implementing well will pay dividends day in and day out. And I'd also toss in at the end, when you're talking to sales folks who are trying to get you across that line, remember that's their job, and there's something in it for them, right? There's the sales folks that you're talking to, their one job is to get you to sign something, anything, as long as it's on their terms. And it always helps me to think of it that way, to remember that that's what they're supposed to be doing. And on the list of things that they're supposed to be doing, what you need and what you want and what's best for you goes farther and farther down the list, the closer and closer you get to signing something. So think about it that way, and just, again, slow down. I like that idea. And just make sure that the sales guy doesn't matter, because as soon as you sign that contract, you're never going to talk to him again. So,
great points.
They'll tell you that's not true, but it is. It's 100% true.
Right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining here today. We're going to lose half our panel here in about 30 seconds, so we'll have to wrap it up in the interest of time due to other commitments. But thank you, everyone, for being here today. And again, if you're interested in learning from this group as well as others that are not here today, there's about a dozen other speakers that are not here on this panel that will be at Digital Stratosphere, sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, TAF Law, Vero Advisors, and Technology Evaluation Centers, October 4th through the 6th in Denver, Colorado. I'll put up the QR code again. You can also go to stratosphere2023.com. There'll be a lot of great workshops and keynote sessions. There'll be peer networking. There's also live entertainment, an 80s cover band who I personally hand selected for this conference because I love them so much. They're going to be playing Thursday night, October 5th. So if you like 80s music, you're in the right place. What better way to spend your time with a group like this, talking about digital transformation and listening to 80s rock? I mean, I can't think of anything better to be doing, especially on a Thursday night in October. So October 4th through the 6th, check it out, stratosphere2023.com. Thank you to the entire panel discussion here today, or the panel group, for being here today. Really appreciate you guys all being here. And we'll look forward to seeing you at Stratosphere in Denver in October. Hope everyone has a great week here, and we'll see you all soon. Take care and have a great week.
Thank you, guys. Bye.